This is a quick video on the Thedacare Ascension case, which is an employment law disaster in the United States. I'm not a total expert on American employment law. I know much more about the English market. However, and I'm obviously not a lawyer, so this is just my personal opinion of what happens, and coming at it from a socialist communist perspective. As a brief overview, Thedacare employees, a group of radiology and cardiovascular unit employees, applied for jobs in a competitor's hospital called Ascension, and even though they handed the notice in and said they're gonna leave, they gave the opportunity to Thedacare to make a counter offer, to match the salaries and the package, but Thedacare declined, and instead of permitting the employees to move to the new competitor, Thedacare go to a court to try and get a restraining order. And from my understanding, it wasn't because they had restrictions in their contracts, like a post-employment restriction of preventing movement to a new employer. It was that they claimed that the healthcare of the region would be jeopardised because they're going to lose, that many staff so quickly that and it's a hospital kind of thing. It's in healthcare that it's going to put patients at risk. All this is total BS. It's total BS because if they were that bothered, they would have matched the packages and salaries to keep them. Number two, if they were that bothered, they would have made a counter proposal. But of course, it has very little to do with them not being able to carry out their functions or get a replacement staff in time. It has to do with competition and having the upper hand against your competitors. It has very little to Thedacare not being able to perform its actual functions. Ultimately, they don't want to be embarrassed by losing a number of staff to competitors, and the disgusting laws within America and within the West, practically all over the world actually, that permit restraining orders, injunctions to stop employees moving, is an absolute disgrace. These should be made illegal. Workers should have a universal right to leave their employer and work for whoever they want, even if it would cause staff shortages and other issues. I mean, we live in, even though I'm completely opposed to a competitive market, but because I'm a communist, I don't believe in a market-based economy where we're all competing against each other. I believe in a fundamentally cooperative economy where workers are members of consumer and workers' councils or some other structure that's similar to that, and where all workplaces are democratically run, where workers can get up and leave to a new workers' council and consumer council, and where we don't compete for work, we're allocated work based upon planning. But we live in a totally different system to this, essentially, where everything's competitive and it's a kind of open market, dog eat dog world. Well, if you want to live in that world, I definitely don't. But fundamentally, I care about the interests of workers, and ultimately, the interests of workers are not that they should be controlled in this disgusting manner where they're told you cannot work for a competitor, you cannot do that, you must stay in your current employer, which suppresses wages, suppresses job improvements, job conditions. That's a disgrace. So it's a disgusting restraint on trade, and it should be made illegal. Also, So the judge was totally wrong. I don't know the particular law of the particular state that permits them to carry out an injunction in these circumstances, and I don't believe for a second that the injunction has anything to do with the real fears that they won't be able to carry out the hospital's functioning capacity to handle patients. I don't think it has anything to do with that. They could have got replacement staff, they could have got temporary agency workers, they could have made a counter offer. There's no way, I believe, that this I think it has very little to do with that. I think this has to do with trying to prevent workers from going to a competitor, from saving face, not being embarrassed, and to exploit the disgusting laws that permit workers to be controlled in this manner. So, this is what needs to happen. These injunctions that occur in this manner, that prevent employees to move into a new competitor because of fears that the company can't carry out their functions, need to be made illegal. Number two, all restrictions, post-employment restrictions, non-solicits, non-poaching, non-competes, all of them, literally all of them, should be made completely illegal as a fundamental bill of rights for workers that permits them to work for whoever they want, whenever they want, as long as they meet the contractual obligation to give their employer enough time to find, like 1 month's notice. So as long as they do that, they should be completely free to work for whoever they want, set up a competing business, have shares, stocks in other companies, including competitors if they really want to. They should be free to work and earn money, have side hustles, side jobs if they want to. They should be completely free to do all that with no restrictions whatsoever on workers. So all these post-employment restrictions should be made illegal, even though, as far as I'm aware, they didn't actually come to play in this circumstances. But it probably did, in the sense that the employer believes it is wrong that workers would go to a competitor, but it's not wrong. It improves the conditions and salary remuneration for the workers by enabling them to go to a competitor. They want to workplaces should have to, under this disastrous capitalist system, they should have to compete for workers to improve workers' packages, remuneration, conditions, benefits and so forth. They should have to compete. So, but companies think that they own you and that they shouldn't have to compete. They think that they should be able to block workers for months and months and months. That's an absolute disgrace. So all restrictions should be made illegal. And thirdly, exclusivity should be made completely illegal. So it should be illegal to say, my employees will only work for me. Employees should be free to go on Fiverr, go on Upwork or whatever you call it, and go on all the other freelancer websites, or set up another business that is either related to what the job they're doing or is completely unrelated. And they should be free to earn money in a different capacity outside of working hours. Obviously, they should have to fulfill their contractual obligations during work hours, but after that, if they want to do a few side hustles for a couple of hours a night, if that's what they want to do, they should be free to do it. Where, unfortunately, fairly boilerplate terms within England, within America, as far as I'm aware, well, actually, I shouldn't say about America because I'm not 100% sure, but I have seen it in a lot of states where basically these companies, they copy and paste an employment contract off the internet, and the typical terms are that you must not have any other income sources other than the company you work for. Now, I'm sure if you asked a lot of companies, is there going to be an issue that I make money from other jobs? I'm sure a lot of them, maybe even a majority, would say that's totally fine, it's not a problem. But nevertheless, these terms are written into contracts, and they're totally wrong. And ultimately, I know this has nothing to do with the Thedacare case. It's all a part of a related problem, in that there is a restraint on trade that is wrong, and there is a fundamental violation, in my opinion, of working rights. They don't exist. So this right that I'm talking about now, it doesn't yet exist, but it does exist in terms of it's the moral thing to do. We need to bring them in. Now, I know some states, like California, they've banned post-employment restrictions or non-competes. They've banned non-competes. And I know that some states are banning or have banned exclusivity, so you can work multiple jobs. But I don't know about American law completely, so I can't talk in depth about it all. I can only talk generally. But basically, we need to do these things. We need to ban the injunctions that permit courts to do this, to stop workers from going to competitors, ban all post-employment restrictions, including talking to customers, including using the same suppliers, including working for competitors, including poaching staff. They should be free to poach staff. If they compete, they should have to compete with them. And number 3, exclusivity should be completely banned. That definitely has to happen. Workers need to join unions. You need to join a union. You need to get collective bargaining if you meet the conditions. Collective bargaining means that you collectively bargain with your union and your colleagues collectively against the employer, and you strike if you cannot get the conditions that you want. This is what has to happen. Unions are a fundamental part of workplace democracy under the capitalist system that exists now, where we don't have democracy at work. I believe, because fundamentally workers produce the profit, so workers should be in control. Workers should be in control through a system of worker councils, essentially, or worker assemblies, where workers vote for the decisions of the company based upon one worker, one vote. That would happen in a communist system where everything's planned and there's no market and there's no competition. The workplaces should still be democratically run. At the lowest level, they should be democratically run, absolutely. So we also need that, but fundamentally that will take years and years to come about. Some people believe that would come about in a revolution. Some other people believe it could be reformed and we can reform capitalism. I don't know is the honest answer. But we do need to do that. Ultimately, what has happened in the Thedacare case is an absolute disgrace. The judge was wrong, in my opinion. From a moral perspective, definitely. It was a disgrace. The workers should be free to work for a competitor. We need legal reform across the whole world over these things, because a lot of countries have these disastrous laws that permit the disgusting control of man like this.